Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I'm looking forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where Alan and I sat down and did a 5-minute clinic on how to level up. Today, for episode number 260, we are going to do a small talks episode on intuition and how to use it. If you're watching us on YouTube, it looks like I was crying because I was. Because we were laughing so hard.
We are in a giggly mood, I want to warn you in advance. But before we jump into this episode on intuition, I want you to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join, hashtag hyperconsciousnation. Folks, if you don't feel supported in your goals and dreams, that is an anchor in your life. Come hang out with some engines.
Whoa, fire. And if you want to hang out with engines in person, January 25th at the UMass Lowell Convention Center, Alan and I will be speaking, Joanna DePena will be speaking, Mark Metry will be speaking, Brant Pinvidic is headlining. We have 3 other fire speakers as well that we will be revealing at a later date. Top Notch Live, guys. Okay, every single person wants to do better in the new year. But wanting to do better and doing better are 2 different things. And if you have your butt in this seat, you're going to learn more about finances, you're going to learn more about relationships, you're going to learn more about how to become more hyperconscious, about health and fitness, about motivation, about so many things. And you're going to be able to take that home with you and create changes in your life. And that's what we want for you.
We got to witness so many people change their lives after Your World Within Live, and now we believe in events like this even more. We would attend this even if we weren't speaking.
For sure.
Like, absolute fire. It'll change your life. Okay, intuition.
Yes, why?
And how to use it. Okay,
Why are we talking?
You and I were traveling in the car.
As we often do.
To the venue to meet with the person at the venue that we're working with to make this event spectacular.
Kathleen.
And we talked a little bit about how we always kind of heard that whisper in the back of our minds that something was right or wrong. You often say there's the right answer and then there's the easy answer. And I think the right answer is always kind of there and it whispers. But we also talked about how we've said on the show many times, when the pain is great enough, you'll change. I think when the pain is great enough, all of a sudden the whisper becomes a scream and you actually finally act on the thing that you always kind of knew in the back of your mind anyway. Thoughts?
I think that when you're in pain, you listen better. I don't know. And we haven't talked about this, so we talked a little bit in the car about it, but I feel like when you're in pain, I think it's still a whisper, but you're willing to listen.
Right.
Because it's on your reticular activating system.
Some would say.
Think about it, like the colors are always there. You just don't see them until you're looking for them specifically.
Is this this is kind of the same as you can't see the stars during the day.
Probably.
Sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly what you simply couldn't within the light. So when you're in emotional pain, you're in the the and you can hear the whisper.
I think you're willing to listen.
Right. And
because
solitude as well.
You're already in. It's like let me see. Okay. No, that was pretty dark.
Let's do it.
It's dark.
Okay.
So if you were handcuffed, so you would never think of cutting your own hand off, almost ever.
Right.
If you were handcuffed and you were going to die, you would think of cutting your own hand off.
Yeah.
When you're in pain, you're willing to go through more pain to get to pleasure or to survive.
Wow.
Dark.
That was dark, but it
though.
was
I didn't
fire.
want to- I didn't want, but so I think when you're in the dark, you're willing to dig a little bit deeper into the dark and kind of face your demons. That's why I think rock bottom is a great place to build, because you're at the lowest point, but you're willing to. You're building off the truth, and you're building off of like what really is instead of running from your insecurities. In my case, that's why I always go back to like my first rock bottom was when I got my heart broken, and my bills doubled and my responsibilities doubled. But my belief in myself wasn't there, and I had to dig deep into like, why don't you believe in yourself? What parts of your past are you putting way too much value in materialistic objects and money and women and all that? And I had to dig till I got to the foundation.
So, what's a time in your? So, I guess when it comes to intuition, did you know? What was the whisper before that?
I literally used to say, I'm counting down the days till that girl leaves me. I knew she was going to leave me. I knew it. I was positive of it.
Okay, so that was your intuition.
Almost to the point where when she did, I was happy in a weird way because I knew it was going to happen eventually. I just didn't know when.
And so then your biggest fear was realized.
Yeah,
So
and I
then
didn't have to
now
worry
you
about
were
it
free
anymore.
of that. Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But that could also be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So I believe that intuition is your subconscious mind, and we actually looked up the definition prior. It talks about how you know something, but not in your conscious awareness. So what hyperconsciousness is becoming acutely aware of why something is the way it is. So when you said you knew she was going to leave you, that wasn't like a conscious thing necessarily.
Right, no.
It was just like a knowing.
Yeah, I felt it.
Right. You felt it.
Felt it.
I think your feelings are your intuition. So your subconscious brain, if you read the biology of belief, he talks about how it's 40,000 times more powerful. The analogy I use at my speeches is picture 4K TV. 1 pixel is your conscious mind. The other 3,999 pixels are the subconscious mind. But the 1 pixel that's conscious is the leader. And so what your intuition picks up on, it has far more processing power. Like they always say, like everything that you see, like if you look to the right and then look to the left, your subconscious has both those memories. But yet consciously you didn't observe everything.
Right.
So like that doorknob, like my subconscious saw that even though I didn't consciously pick up on it until we started talking about it. So what is a time in your life where something was whispering that you kind of knew, but yet you didn't act on until it was not too late, but like the pain came?
I don't know if this is a good example, but like I knew I was going to end up with Taryn again.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Actually, we were playing Call of Duty, and I remember you saying like, "I know this is a thing," and that was pretty early on.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Right.
That was before.
You remember what I'm talking about? The instance?
I don't remember that one
Oh, okay.
specifically. No, how long ago was that?
We were playing snipers. How long ago was that? So how long have you been with her? The second time?
8 months.
8 months. So yeah, it was probably like a month or two before.
Okay.
But you two were talking. I think you had already gotten coffee.
Oh, all right. See, I said this long before.
Okay.
I'm talking like 2 years ago.
Well, I remember you asking me in the car.
Yeah, but there's a time between that where I remember saying like I need to end up with somebody like her. Like I always said like it was warm, like she was just warm. I feel warm when I'm with her.
Yeah, that was your intuition.
I think it was even back when we first started dating. I think I knew I wanted to be with somebody like her. I just didn't think I could. I didn't know how, but I knew it was nice, and I think I somewhere knew that like you should end up with somebody like that. And I don't know if that's intuition. I know.
I think it is.
In terms of like how about this? We were just talking about we have a couple. Well, not a couple. We have a bunch of options when it comes to the last 3 speaking slots.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out who we can bring that'll give you guys the best experience.
Right.
And I said, honestly, I think we should reach out to Tori Leto.
Yes.
Because I think
I agree.
relationships would be fire.
Yeah.
Now, that's intuition.
And we just did that.
That was out of nowhere. I was sitting here and I was like, oh, that might be.
Right.
I feel it. I feel like she would come. It would be fire.
That's your subconscious. So your conscious mind is asking the question, because we were talking about it, who should we get to this event? Then your subconscious works on it, and all of a sudden you have a spark and you have an idea, and your intuition says, I feel like that's a good fit.
And it's a feel.
And that's the reticular activating system we talk about. Like you primed it with the question, which is why when we went to Mass Maritime, there wasn't a lot of Q&A, and we think it was because we didn't tell them in advance we're going to have Q&A.
Right.
Whereas if
We jeffed it,
we
some would say.
some would say. Interesting.
Yeah. It's hard to say because how many intuitions, it's the only way you know that you're having or you're using your intuition is if you take action on it. If not, it's just a thought that comes and goes that you don't know what would have happened.
I think it takes courage because when you have that spark, what if you were afraid of rejection? Why would you reach out to Tori? I literally did it right then, but that's because I don't feel fear of rejection from her at all. I think that'd be a great fit. I think she'll say yes, genuinely. But I also tend to think that.
Yeah.
So where's the time in your life where you had an intuition moment where you're like, I need to do this, but you were afraid? And here's the thing. You don't always know why you have to do it. You can't connect the dots.
I
looking
know.
forward.
It's hard for me even to look back and remember those times. Because it's like, if you didn't take action on it, you wouldn't
know what you left on the table.
And you wouldn't even remember it.
Yeah.
Because what really locks in the feeling is the success.
I remember when we were in the gym, but this is when we first started hanging out. I think it was pre-podcast. And I said, I really want to ask that girl out. And you said, if you don't do it, you'll be
Sonya Blade.
Yeah, Sonya Blade, exactly. She looks like Sonya Blade. That was not actually her name. And you came up to me and said, don't do it. If you don't do it, I don't want to hear about it again tonight.
Yeah.
And I went up and asked her, and I think she ended up having a boyfriend or something like that. But that was my intuition saying I want to ask her. And what if I didn't? What if I was afraid and didn't do it? That you would never know.
I think the problem I'm having with this in general is just I don't know. Usually I know, like, if you're going through this, then you can expect this. I don't know what, if you're watching or listening, I don't know what your intuition is telling you because I think it's very situational. Like for us, I think our intuition, and this is maybe a weird thing, I think it's going to help us be better podcasters and be better coaches and,
100%.
And better speakers.
Because we decided consciously in advance to do that, though.
Well, okay, so if you're listening and you're a mom or a dad, maybe you have an intuition that your child is sick. I don't know. I've never had that because I don't have a child.
Right.
So I think for you, how do you quantify that in somebody else? How do you explain what intuition is so they can resonate with it?
I think by providing more examples of when this
What about
happened.
you? Give me some examples for you. I think you're more conscious of when you have them. I think.
So we had a call with our whole team, and I opened up and was vulnerable about how scared I was to admit if I admitted what I really wanted in an intimate partner, I would be afraid that person wouldn't exist.
Right.
And it's funny because looking back, you and I had several conversations. So Emilia had reached out several times to suggest topics for this show. One time in particular, selfishness versus selflessness. And that's a topic I got really passionate about if you go back and listen to it. And it's funny because back then she was just a podcast listener who was friends with Bianca. But you and I talked many times, and you said to me, and I've said to myself too, like, there's something about her. And you said you should reach out to Emilia. You said that to me several times. Then I talked to the whole team about how I needed to get clarity on what I really wanted in an intimate relationship. And I was afraid to get clarity on that because if I did, then I was afraid that person wouldn't exist. And what's funny is after that call, I had an intuition moment. I'll never forget it. I was in the gym at Impact Fitness. It's 9:00 at night on a Friday night, and I reached out to Emilia. As a matter of fact, I had reached out to her a couple times prior to that to ask her out on a date, but it's a funny story. I went on Facebook to do my research, and it said in a relationship, but it didn't. There was no guys, no pictures of guys, and there was no name next to it. So several times I reached out to her to ask if she was in a relationship. Hey, true or false? Are you in a relationship? And I unsent it. We still talk about this. Like, I unsent the message because I was afraid of rejection and or afraid she was in a relationship and I didn't want to be that guy. Now, in the gym, I decided to send it and I didn't unsend it. She was actually with Bianca that night watching one of my favorite movies, The Lion King, and then we started talking and we've been, for lack of better phrasing, inseparable ever since. But that was intuition. I had I consciously chose in advance what I wanted finally, and then my intuition said, I don't know why yet, but you have to reach out to this person.
So then let's do this. If you're watching or listening, if you ever have my gut is telling me.
Right.
I think that's intuition.
Right. I do too.
If you ever, maybe you don't call it intuition. Maybe you don't say like, I feel something. Maybe you say my gut is telling me. So how can the name of this episode, intuition and how to use it? How can you use your intuition? You have to first recognize it and understand that I have a gut feeling that this is going to happen. The only way you'll ever know whether or not it will happen or if it did happen is to follow through. And I think that's why some people are really good. Like they say, I'm really connected to my intuition. I think that's because they practice more.
Right.
And when they have a feeling.
And they've proven it.
Right. So if you have a feeling, my gut is telling me blank. Do blank and see what happens.
Here's the problem, though. If you don't decide what you want to become in advance or something you want to achieve in advance, this is what I believe intuition is. And I also think intuition is the opposite of ego. I just realized that. Because if you're making decisions based on ego, you're not using your intuition because the ego is your prefrontal cortex. So decisions of the heart versus decisions of the head. Intuition, I believe, is this. So let's say you decided, and we decided, so Kevin and I decided to have the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts. Now, I believe the persons, places, things, and ideas necessary to achieve that are now going to pop up into our consciousness as intuition moments. Like the Torioletto thing. That's like all of a sudden, I don't know why necessarily, but that feels right. How many times does that happen? But it only happens because of the goal.
Yeah.
Without the Top Notch Live and the desire to have the best speakers possible for the listeners, that intuition moment wouldn't have happened. So you have to decide in advance what you want to accomplish. Then your subconscious mind and your reticular activating system will go to work for you. Imagine one soldier who's a general and 40,000 soldiers that are taking commands from the general. The hyper-conscious part of you, your conscious mind, is the general. You have to decide in advance what you want. I'm always telling Kevin, like, I can't explain why we have to do this, but we have to do this. Because, and I know why we have to do it, because I believe it will work out, but I can't explain how it's going to work out yet.
So it's either an unconscious or a subconscious decision or action or feeling. It's an unconscious feeling that you believe will help you get closer to a goal that you have set.
Right.
Interesting.
Fire. That's a really good definition of it. The problem is, if you haven't set a goal, you won't have,
Right.
You'll just have intuition based on bad things happening, not on what's possible.
I
for
believe
good things
Intuition is also a Jewel album. You know Jewel?
No.
Pop star. I think it's also an album. This is a very explorative episode.
What do you believe intuition is? Do you resonate with everything I said?
No.
What do you think it is?
I don't know because again, there aren't many things that, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to do a scratching the surface episode on belief, and we're going to dive deep into all sorts of my things.
Yes.
But
which I think will connect well with this.
I feel like I don't know. I always say I felt it. It felt right, but I've never really considered intuition. I've just considered it a feeling. I've never really put a name to it.
Like when it felt right with. So we talked before in the preamble how Kevin hasn't always, and we'll unpack this a lot more on the Scratching the Surface about belief, but like you haven't done a lot of choosing in advance what you wanted, and then the problem is what I just said was all predicated on reverse engineering a goal and letting your subconscious work on it. But you've always had feelings about certain things.
Well, I probably have. The thing is, again, it's like intuition. You only know that it's intuition if you take action on it, and then if it works, you're going to remember it. I've probably had 1,000 times where my subconscious was telling me to do something, I just didn't do it because I didn't believe it would pay off.
Right.
So to me, it's I don't know.
Now you'll be trusting it more. That's why they talk about trusting your intuition. The Rock says don't make decisions. He says this verbatim. It's really important that you don't make decisions based on ego. He always talks about how my gut. I go by my gut.
Yeah.
I don't think we weren't really taught about intuition, and I'm learning a lot about it because Emilia is so good at this, but I'm starting to learn how to trust my intuition even more.
I think that's something that I have to consciously practice because I do, like I said, I think Torioletto. What about her?
Right. Fire idea.
I feel things, but I don't know. I'm doing a far better job of because I've said that lately. Like I just felt it and I did it. I just did it.
Right.
And I don't know that.
That's the faith that
maybe
it'll
I should
work
be
out.
more specific about writing these things down, or maybe be more mindful of writing these things down.
I texted you today saying I don't know why, but I have a pull to reach out to Kim Spencer potentially for the event. And it's like, that's my intuition
Right.
saying, I can't explain necessarily yet why, but this is a good fit.
Right.
This feels right. Yeah. So remember when we used to talk about U, B, and E and going on your feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and I would always like reverse engineer logically, like why we're a good fit. We drove to 5 on this. Drive did. And by the way, a specific ocean, the Pacific.
Yeah, man, who knows? I'm fried today.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, I think we're gonna go.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think we're gonna go now. I really do believe this episode though is super powerful. If you're out there right now, 10-second blip for them.
10-second blip for them. The only way to trust your gut is to listen to it, take action, and then reflect.
That's fire.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Set more goals in advance, and your intuition will work for you, not against you.
Ooh, fire! Maybe the best 2 10-second blips on this side of the east of the of the Mississippi.
The
My
east side of
goodness.
the Pacific
All right, we're gonna
Ocean.
go. We're gonna go. We're gonna go now. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this. Very explorative, but what is it like? Use an example.
A couple bros talking intuition.
Use this in your own life. Where do you feel the pull? Where do you feel like your gut is telling you to do something?
Yeah, inspired.
Yeah,
I
where
feel like
do you
I'm
feel?
pulled
Write
to
it
this.
down,
Right.
and then if you take action on it, write it down, and then see what happens.
Fire.
And lock it in. We hope you enjoyed. Up next, we are going to dig into my pain, and we are going to talk about belief and how for a lot of my life, I feel like I got lucky.
Yeah.
And when you get lucky, you cannot leverage that in your future. You cannot replicate luck. And I never really decided that I was going to succeed at something and then succeeded at it. So
If you think you're getting lucky, you're not building confidence. We'll talk about that.
we hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.